looking forward to this event and building community and giving people a space to share and interact. I mean, clearly a lot of us have been in isolation for so long, and with everything going on, I think that today will be a really important opportunity for people to kind of to share, you know, and ground it in community and connection.
Yeah, and I hope this is the first of many of our connections.
Me too. Me too. Hey, Chaz, thanks for joining us. Chaz is our community coordinator. She just started this week.
Oh, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome. So,
to dive into what I want people to do without maybe sharing about why I think it's important and why it's mattered for me. And I have found in my life that finding a path to connection with people through civic engagement and feeling like my voice could actually make a difference has really had a profound impact on me. When I was a kid, I remember so often feeling like I would look around and see injustices and it would just make me mad. And I didn't understand how people could be cruel to each other or not care about their neighbors. And I grew up in Georgia, and I think I grew up in an area where maybe my opinion and my voice was not the one I heard most commonly, and actually often felt like there was something wrong with me and knew that I didn't belong, at least didn't belong in the stream of thought that I was around, for sure. And found myself in Pennsylvania about close to 15 years ago now, and accidentally kind of volunteered myself into a staff role in the Obama campaign. And during that time, I really started to see for the first time ever in my life that I could make a difference. Like, I think before that, I felt like I'm just one person. Like, I can volunteer, I can make a difference, but I didn't feel like I had a place in systemic change. And for the first time ever, I really started to embrace the idea that one voice, one vote, one person, that I, as an individual, really could change things. And about 15 years later, here I am. And I have the privilege of being with all of you tonight and getting to hear your stories and the things that have brought you here. And I'm just so proud to be part of the work that Philly Counts is doing. The census is such a unique opportunity, and all the civic engagement that we do, there's all these rules about who counts and who gets to participate. And the census is the one thing in our country, the one civic activity where every single person counts. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter. It's just wherever you live, you count there. And I think that that's a really powerful message, and it's really great to be a part of. So I'm, again, very, very happy to be with all of you tonight and appreciate this space. And do want to share about Philly Counts Fridays, because we are working really, really hard to raise awareness about the census and to get people thinking about it, because it is a little wonky, and we do have a few things going on in the world right now. So we have some t-shirts and some hats. You see people with hats on and t-shirts and buttons. And on Fridays, we are asking people to wear their Philly Counts swag and talk to people about the census and the fact that it is Philly Counts Fridays. So in true fashion, that there's a lot going on in the world right now, I'm realizing it's Friday. I didn't even really think about what day it was, and I don't have my swag on. So at some point I'll sneak over and I'll get something so I can be ready to go too. But I do encourage all of you to please remind people that you know that the census is absolutely critical. It's our path to representation, which is our voice in whether we agree with the things we see in the world or we don't. And it is also about all the funding that we get to support people in times like these. And with the recovery around COVID on the horizon, the census is going to be more important now than it's ever been. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I really always get jazzed up talking to Stephanie because she has such a passion for the work that she does in the community. I recently moved from Philadelphia, as in 3 years ago, moved from Charlotte, North Carolina back to Philadelphia. And her Southern warmth always makes me feel kind of like, you know, part of home is here in Philly. So I really appreciate your passion, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for the partnership. I will move on to the next portion of our program, but just to give you guys a little glimpse into what we have in store for you today. We, as in Philly Counts 2020 Census and the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing and Hospital of the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania have all come together, as well as some of our longtime friends of We the People stage, to build a really dynamic program for you. So we'll be hearing, we've always done story sharing and story slams on theme. This is no different. The only difference is twofold. This event has several different nuances. So we're gonna be hearing about why Philly counts. We are going to be hearing from frontline heroes who help us get through this very, very, very stressful time and challenging time on a daily basis. We will be also hearing from some artists and poets and entrepreneurs on the topics of everyday grit and faith. We also have a very talented speaker who happens to be a veteran and a minister on the line, as well as our venue partner, Mike Myers from Current. So you'll be hearing from, again, the University of Pennsylvania. Then we'll go to Ava and Jameer from Philly Counts. We'll hear from Mr. Mike Myers from Current Brew and Brew. Then we'll touch on everyday grit with Jamina, Marshall, and Lido. Yes. We'll hear from Jimmy White IV, and finally Petros Papoulis and Shauna on the topics of everyday grit and faith. So just so you have a little bit of an idea of what the 3 hours is gonna be encompassing, we do recognize that this is a virtual event. We appreciate you for staying for however long you can, but we definitely encourage you to stay and listen to some of the really, really amazing stories that we're gonna be hearing tonight. So without further delay, I'm gonna introduce Miss Terry Lipman and the folks from the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing and the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, including Marcus Henderson, ClareBennett. We have also with us Jennifer Gill and Frankie. I'm gonna definitely butcher your last name, Frankie P. So I'm gonna turn it over to your group. Hey, Terry, Marcus, Claire, Frankie, and Jennifer, how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, we're good.
We're doing great.
We're so happy to be here. And when you were talking about community, it really made me think. I mean, Penn School of Nursing is committed to community and has a lot of community engagements, but we have new communities all the time. And We the People stage is a new community. Philly Counts 2020 is a new community. And what happens when we're engaged in new communities is it makes us better nurses. And being engaged with the census and really thinking about the census has made us better nurses. And we're also here to share our stories. This is, as you said, an incredibly challenging, difficult time, and we're all together. So I'm here with the students from Penn Nursing and my colleagues from the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, and we are just grateful that we're part of this. You know, I was thinking today about a story, and I was thinking about, I'm a nurse practitioner. I work with children with diabetes, and yesterday I got a call from a child who was home alone. Her 10 years old, her mother was at work. She works in a nursing home. Her grandmother, who usually watches her, can't come to the home because the mother's afraid she's going to infect the grandmother. So this is a 10-year-old child with diabetes who's home alone, taking insulin, checking her blood sugar. She's home with a 12-year-old brother, but essentially she's home alone. And she FaceTimes with her mother and her grandmother every time she has to take a shot. And she called me because she couldn't find her mom, and she was crying and she was anxious. And while I was talking to her, her mother called her back. And it made me think about how much anxiety there is at this time and how difficult and isolating it can be. And we all have some similar stories. Some of our stories are personal, some are professional, but we're here to share and we're here to be part of the community. And Marcus, you know, I know you've had a really challenging time in the past couple of months, and you've been really generous about sharing what you've been through and how that's kind of impacted you as a nurse.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Like Terry said, I'm a nurse. I practice as a child and adolescent psychiatric and behavioral health nurse here in the city. Born and raised Philadelphia native, so I am so fortunate to have the opportunity to provide care back to the community that I was raised in. You know, I've had a very personal experience. I actually tested positive for COVID very early on when everything started, you know, happening. I was in California in the beginning of March, and then that's when the cruise docked in San Francisco, and that's really when the nursing home in Washington started, and that was like, oh, this is coming. This is going to hit us by storm. And I remember shortly after that, I began developing symptoms and called my doctor, got tested at a testing site, and lo and behold, I tested positive. And I remember my first feelings were just of guilt. The guilt that I was not on the front lines. I wasn't with my colleagues during the beginning of this and experiencing that with them, to support them, to have them support me. And I remember just feeling this immense guilt. And I think on top of that, fortunately, I was able to take care of myself at home. But I also had the advantage of being a nurse, knowing to take 10 deep breaths an hour to prevent complications with, my lungs and breathing and things like that. And it made me think about the people that don't have that knowledge, who don't know when their blood oxygen levels might be low by, using a stethoscope to listen to their lungs. And it made me just starting to think about, and then you see on the news that all these people are getting sick, going to the hospital, and the sense of community is gone because everything's shut down. Everything goes to virtual. And as someone who has experienced anxiety and depression before, I felt that coming on because I didn't know what was going to happen. One day I could go to sleep and be fine, and the next day I could wake up and not breathe. So I remember just being, starting to get that intense anxiety. And then, it was my family, it was my friends, it was my nursing family that really was my support system. And the way that I got over my guilt, if you will, was participating in advocacy efforts just to make sure that nurses and other healthcare providers and essential workers and the public just had what they needed, the information they needed to get through this together. And then, for my patients, I think, they don't get visits. They don't see their family. I work in an inpatient environment where some outpatient caseworkers and therapists and things come in, and that's no longer. So we as the nurses are playing a lot of different roles, not just the nurse. We're, being that all those other support systems that people normally would have. So it's been interesting when it's a field that relies heavily on in-person interaction.
Right.
So now we're seeing more patients having acute mental health episodes because they can't go to the clinic. They can't see their therapist. Their family-based home visit worker can't come to the house. Parents have to go to work and kids are home alone, like Terry talked about. So you begin starting not only to take on your own burden, but then the burden of the people you're caring for, because you're trying to be that in place of what they're missing.
I'm curious. I mean, there's as you said, such a complex series of challenges that we face as a community, and definitely you as healthcare providers. So I'm wondering if any of the other nurses that are on.
I actually want to touch base on that because when I heard you talking, Marcus, you felt the first word that you said was guilt. And I remember that feeling so vividly because I also got very sick. So I'm an ER nurse, and I remember walking my first shift before, as we started the conversations of how we're going to see patients and preparing, and we weren't even doing testing at that time. So this was my first shift walking into work where we were going to do that. And I remember picking up hours that week and feeling like, this is the time I'm being called, and it's my duty to work and to provide for my community. And that very first shift when I walked in, we were screening ourselves, and I was found to have a fever, and I didn't even know at the time. So I didn't even care for a COVID patient or a suspected COVID patient, and I was told that I needed to go home. And at that very moment, I just felt so guilty that I wasn't able to be with my teammates, coworkers, colleagues, and, that excitement and duty transitioned to fear and anxiety. And I personally did not feel comfortable talking to my family or talking to, I knew that you were going through the same thing, but, I think that we could have probably done a better job with supporting each other in that way and other people who are going through the same thing. So I felt a lot of this common themes that you explained.
That's super interesting. I'm so sorry to hear that you both contracted it. I'm so happy that you appear to have recovered.
Doing well.
Yeah, good. Not everyone can say that, so I'm really happy that that's your story. But yeah, Frankie, what's been your experience as, a frontline worker?
So it's actually very interesting sitting here listening to Jill and Marcus's stories, because I feel like I was going to say the exact same thing. I work at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. I'm an RN there. And my unit was the first unit to become a COVID unit at the hospital. So since March 9th, we've been caring for patients with COVID-19, which has been one of the most stressful experiences I've gone through in my life. But I also tested positive for COVID-19. And I guess about 2 weeks in, and my first gut instinct was guilt. And it wasn't guilt for the community, because I knew I was being safe and keeping social distance and quarantining beforehand, but guilt that I wasn't going to be able to be there for the patients. I wasn't going to be able to be there for my coworkers. We talked a lot about community too. And I think such a big part of nursing is the community you create with your coworkers. Nurses go through something I don't think anyone else goes through with your coworkers, and it creates this special bond between everyone. And my instant reaction was guilt that I was not going to be able to be there to help fight alongside them. So very similar experiences for sure.
That's really, one of the things that stands out. Clearly, the three of you have contracted COVID, you've recovered. It's just, I can only imagine, a very scary thing. And Jill, I think you had mentioned or touched on that there might be a little bit of stigma around contracting it. So there's also that sense of isolation. And Claire, I would love to hear, what's been your experience with this whole situation that we are finding ourselves in with the pandemic?
Yeah, I also work at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. I'm Claire. I'm an ICU nurse, and I actually did not, knock on wood, contract COVID. Fingers crossed. I can't even imagine, feeling like you've worked so hard and then, feeling the guilt of not being able to support your peers, which is not the case, by the way. That's not how we feel. But my story, I totally relate with, feeling guilty and not being able to, participate if you're, self-quarantined for 2 weeks. But my story is a little bit different in that I felt guilty sometimes coming into work, because sometimes I had this feeling of I don't want to be here, because it was really hard for my you know, for myself, from a mental health perspective, you know, you really have to, as a nurse, find strength in really difficult situations. And for me, my situation was a little unique because I was just coming back from maternity leave in March. And all I could think of in my head was this panic of, I'm going to bring COVID home to my 3-month-old son and to my husband, and then who's going to be able to take care of them if I can't? And, you know, so piggybacking off of guilt, but not because I wasn't thinking I won't be there for my coworkers, but because of, I was kind of feeling like, why me? Why do I have to go in this situation? Being an ICU nurse, I knew I was going to be taking care of COVID patients all the time, 24/7. And so I think I kind of psyched myself out before I even, you know, got to the COVID ICU units that, you know, I'm definitely going to get it. You know, every day is dangerous for me and woe is me type thing. And I think I realized probably a couple weeks in that, like Frankie said, your team, your nursing team is so important, and you really have to use each other to, you know, find strength and be resilient. And I think one of the things that nurses don't realize is that they have this innate resiliency that we just, you know, it just kind of happens. We don't know. We deal with all sorts of change and we have to adapt every day. And with the COVID situation, we adapted hour by hour. And I think you realize how much you lean on your team members. And that's what I did. So I talked to a lot of people who were sharing the same sentiment that, you know, they were feeling anxious at work. What are they doing with their kids? And, you know, HUP created all of these amazing outlets for us. They got us social workers and licensed professionals for us to talk to. They got an anonymous discussion board up for us so we could have an outlet for our feelings, and, you know, they could help us through the situation. And I think it was just really important for all of the nurses, ICU, COVID, you know, those not working with COVID, to really be there for each other. So my experience was more, you know, drawing on the strength of your team and realizing the resiliency and the strength that you really can, you know, muster up in such a difficult situation.
Okay, that's powerful for so many different reasons. I think that one of the things that really stood out to me about your story, Claire, is that there are new ways that we're finding to be connected, to be there for one another. And, you know, it's a very interesting contrast to the guilt that pops up when you can't be there for one another. So I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us on this call, to share your stories. I often hear from some of my friends or coworkers, I work in media, that some people don't know anyone who's contracted the virus. So thank you. I'm so happy that you three have recovered and that you are sharing your story. It's important. I think that you're sharing something that sometimes people have not yet had the opportunity to really engage with. So we're about to transition into our next phase of the program, but I definitely wanted to just lob it back to you 4, you 5, one last time, and see if you had any last thoughts based on anything that anyone else shared or anything that you want to leave all of us with.
Yeah, I actually do have a last thought. I mean, this is an incredibly difficult time in this country. We're in the midst of a pandemic. There's inequity, there's racial disparities, there's racism, and it feels very unsettling, very isolating, very painful. But I was listening to these 4 nurses and I was thinking the future's bright. When we have frontline workers, when we have heroes, healthcare heroes like this, I just felt very, very comforted. Hearing their stories were difficult, but they had personally difficult stories, and yet were committed to improving health and really to their communities. So I wanted to end on a positive note because I'm so proud to work with these nurses and with all the nurses and healthcare workers that are part of my community.
Thank you so much. for all the work that you do, for your bravery. I mean, just because you work in the front line as a profession doesn't mean that you don't experience the human emotions that come with this challenging time. So I appreciate you facing your fears for the benefit of all of us. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And Marshall James Kavanaugh, who's also one of our featured storytellers, says, thank you all for your stories. Stephanie echoes that. She says, thank you for sharing, Terry. Thank you for bringing us hope. And absolutely, I want to echo that too. Terry and I had the privilege of meeting, and the working group that the Philly Counts 2020 census had set up to really provide a very inclusive space for the community to help Philly pivot, to help Philly Counts in the 2020 census pivot. So it's been a joy working with you, Terry, over the last 2 months and engaging with you. And thank you so much for
Joy is mine.
really doing this.
Thank you.
All right. We will pivot on to our partners at Philly Counts 2020 census. We're going to be hearing from some really amazing individuals. Ava and Jameer are about to come to the floor. So Chaz, if you can please unmute their microphones, that would be much appreciated. They're going to share their personal stories with us. Again, they do work with our partner organization on this program. So they might share a couple of additional thoughts on what Stephanie Reed had shared with us at the opening of the program. But I definitely want to welcome Ava and Jameer to the floor to share your stories. So welcome. I think are you guys unmuted yet?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay. All right, wonderful.
Great. So first I just want to thank you, Quentin, so much for having us and for organizing this whole thing. We kind of put this together really quickly, and I'm super impressed with your work. And thank you all for sharing your stories. I feel really privileged to be able to be a part of these conversations, especially during 2020. As we all know, there's just so much going on in the world, and I think being able to have these conversations and relate to one another and hear each other's stories is really impactful, especially as someone that works in organizing. I wanted to give a shout out to the fact that it is about to be June, which is Pride Month. And as you all know, COVID has kind of changed the way that people are celebrating Pride this year. Typically there are huge festivals and parades during the summer. The Philly Pride Parade is a huge place for community gathering, and a lot of people look forward to it and make connections there. So this year, a slightly less attractive proposal, but this is the year to queer the census. I'm really encouraging folks to take this opportunity to stand up and be counted in 2020 as an expression of your pride and taking pride in your community and showing that you live in Philly and you count in Philly. And especially in 2020, it's going to be really important for LGBTQ+ communities that we get the resources that we need to support those individuals, especially because members of the LGBTQ+ community disproportionately rely on services and programs like food stamps, Medicaid, support for homelessness, and so many other programs, and just our city services that we all use every day. So on the census form, there is no option to declare your sexual orientation. However, it's still really important that members of the community make sure that they get counted this year. There is the opportunity for same-sex couples to indicate that they are their relationship in the same household. So that's also really important data that and that data will be critical to receiving the representation and the funding for those programs that I mentioned before. So yeah, during June, the month of Pride Month, I just want to encourage everybody to use the hashtag #QueerTheCensus, hashtag Philly, hashtag Philly Counts, and hashtag 2020 Census, and encourage your friends and family members who may or may not be a part of that community to participate in the census as well. And I want to hand the mic over to my colleague, Jameer.
All right, thank you so much, Ava. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jameer Connolly, and I'm an organizing fellow with Philly Counts. And in reference to the 2020 census, I feel like as the owner of a Black body, I've always been hyper aware of what it means to count and what it means to be represented now. And in this day and age, I also feel like I know what it means to be hyper visible. And I believe that in cities with like large numbers of historically undercounted individuals, it is imperative that we utilize initiatives like the 2020 census to help make sure that we get the resources that we need to help sustain ourselves. Yeah, and in reference to a story, one came to mind in reference when I was in college. So I had went to a predominantly white institution, and like most people, I had a few jobs on campus. So when I was working, a lot of times I worked with like cleaning up, more janitorial stuff like that. But a lot of times there would be families that would come in for tours, and they would sometimes talk to us, and they would say, "Oh my God, like, yeah, you get to work at Lehigh. This is so cool. You get to do this, you get to do that." And one time, one of the families had stopped me, and they said, "Wow, don't you wish that you got a chance to go to Lehigh University? That's my alma mater." And I was confused. I'm like, I wish I had a chance to go here. But then I realized that just by my visage, just by walking around as the owner of a Black body, people felt like I didn't belong. So saying all that to say, after that moment, I realized that it was imperative that I did make myself be seen. I tried to join as many clubs as I could. I tried to even join student council because I wanted to make sure that for the next generation of Black students at Lehigh, that they knew that there was people on campus that looked like them, and people on campus that were actively fighting for their needs and making sure that their ideas and that their opinions were being heard. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to share. Thank you much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for sharing, both Jameer and Ava. It's so important. Representation is so important, and having that exposure to diverse stories is really important to shaping the way that we view and understand the world that we live in. So I appreciate and thank you for your bravery in sharing your story, Jameer. I know you're getting some love in the chat. Feel free. All of the attendees and storytellers who are not on the microphone at this time, feel free to just, share some love and positive affirmation in the chat box. Our physical events at Current Room Brew is usually very interactive. So that's something that we are missing a little bit of with the virtual space, but I see lots of people chiming in on the chat. Morris, Stephanie's son, Terry, Marshall, thank you so much. Ava, thank you so much for offering that affirmation. So as a member of the tribe, I definitely encourage everyone to be counted in the 2020 census. I don't know if you can see, but I am wearing my Philly swag, and I've got a little bit here in my little swag bin. And, one of my favorite movies is actually Mean Girls. So I just have to preface that because I recognize that I am getting old and that movie's getting a little bit dated. But on Wednesdays, we wear pink, and on Fridays, we wear Philly Counts swag. So definitely be sure to check out their website. It's free swag. It's really to encourage participation and make sure that everyone is submitting for the 2020 census, you can go to wethepeoplesage.com/registration. We've got a little button that clicks right over to Philly Counts registration form, which only takes 1 minute to submit. Their URL for that registration form is super long, which is why I just put that button on our website, but feel free to go get your free swag and t-shirt. I don't really look good in a visor, Ava, so that's the reason why I'm not wearing mine, but you look great. So keep doing what you do. Thank you. Gabby just put the link in the chat. So thank you so much for that. You can just go straight to the chat and get your Philly swag right there. Thank you again for sharing, Ava and Jameer. We are going to turn the mic over to Mr. Mike Myers from Current Brew and Brew, who is currently working. So I don't know if this is actually a good time for you, Mike, but if you are on the line, please speak up. Just let us know that you are here. He's here. The man is here. Okay, Mike.
Right. You hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, today we are talking about everyday grit. We're talking about faith. We're talking about why Philly counts, and of course, our frontline heroes. So we know that you've stayed open. You've had to pivot your business. There's lots going on, and you've got probably your garage doors open right now, sweating a little bit and serving the community. So definitely wanted to just hear a little bit of what your story and journey has been, you know, in light of our current climate, current environment. So tell us a little bit about what you've been going through.
sure. First off, I want to thank you, Quentin. I mean, you do an incredible job. We've been working together, doing some poetry things for the past, I guess since wintertime, right? Actually, before that.
Yeah.
Always a great person to talk to and to kind of talk information about. Quentin's always thinking of other people, and he's just a great person. And I'm glad that we met and got to meet. Secondly, I definitely want to thank the frontline workers. I mean, I can't tell you how much respect and admiration I have for you guys and the amount of work you guys are doing. And you guys are just amazing people, and I just can't say enough about it. My part's, a little less, I'd say important, but it's more, trying to keep a small business going during times like these has been challenging. It's been different. For those of you who don't know, my name is Mike. I own and operate Current Brew and Brew in Fishtown. It's a small cider pub that I opened almost 2 years ago. And we have a small spot in an old carriage house up on Girard Avenue that I actually rehabbed a lot of it myself, and it was just definitely a labor of love type project. But now fast forward to where we are now, things and pivoting and trying to change has been very interesting. I feel like, the role is it's different every day. I think we've had to make some changes. I've obviously working as much as I can to try to, balance out what we need to survive as a company. But on the other side of that, the people, I know Sean and Quentin are both on this call. I mean, they are like huge regular customers that, keep us going and keep me going and wanting me to keep, at least doing my small part to help the community get, their cider if they like their cider. So, I can't say enough again about the neighbors and Fishtown and our regulars that were coming in here before this that still come in week after week. I'm listening to all the stories as I'm filling cider in the background. I've got 2 small canners that I have operating up on the bar, and that's pretty much how we're doing business now. We're getting online orders, which I've never done online before, and filling them on the spot, which is something that's completely different and completely, crazy. are typically open. This is a retail shop, so we're, you know, pouring drafts and having people come in and enjoying themselves in the place. And now we've moved to, you know, to go online and canning on the spot. So it's been different, but you definitely see, you know, the positives in it as well. I mean, we're still here. Enough people are supporting us that we're still going. And it's cool to get a little time safe, obviously, from the beginning, mask, gloves, all that good stuff. But it's good to hear, you know, from the neighborhood and see how everybody's doing. And that's been really important too. So that's kind of what keeps me going and keeps us going, and wanting us to get over the hump to the other side of this and hopefully safely get everybody back to working order, and, you know, as well as the other small businesses in town and all over the place. I mean, we just want to keep doing what we got into business to do, and that's support you all and in the small, you know, way that we can, I guess. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here and multitasking.
Absolutely. You got to do that. There's another piece I forgot. Multitasking is everything. You got to be moving and shaking.
For sure. So for everyone who does not already follow Current Brew and Brew, please go follow them on Instagram. They're linked to their online platform to purchase cider. He's got a customer. He's got to run. His online platform, so you can go do what this customer is doing, which is go to their beautiful garage in this refurbished carriage space and pick up some delicious cider. He's got some CBD product that I love. He's got his own custom wine. They do it all mostly on site. Yeah. So that's support Current, and it's at Current Brew and Brew on Instagram.
Yeah, it's Current Brew and Brew on Instagram. Please follow us. Please come in and check us out if you haven't. We specialize a little bit real quick about the products. Like, we specialize in dry ciders. We started making dry ciders about 5-6 years ago when that wasn't a really popular item. And we've, you know, come a long way, and we have just, you know, a plethora of things that we make now in-house, on-site, in Fishtown. And we have a lot of fun with it, but we just started serving slushies yesterday as well. So now we have current cider slushies that people are lining up for. So please come check us out. Thank you all again too for your continued support, and let's get to the other side of this for sure.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. Again, I want to just relay a couple messages from the chat. Marcus Henderson says thank you, and we cannot forget about all of our frontline essential workers, the people who make sure our grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations, corner stores, and so many others that I've missed are supported. I am extremely grateful to all essential workers. And then Stephanie Reed says, I love how adversity brings innovation. Thanks for sharing your story. So thank you. And I know you got a customer, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be listening. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. All right. We'll see you in a bit.
All right.
But shout out to my team for helping us put together this story. And I really appreciate all those kind words, Mike. It's definitely made possible by team effort and by our partners' effort. Thank you to the mayor for tweeting about this event and sharing the information with everyone. And thank you to Sean, my neighbor. You know, I told him about this idea I had to help, you know, support Mike and our local businesses. And, you know, Sean just jumped right in. And, you know, he didn't ask too many questions. He's an event producer himself now. He's in a different incarnation professionally, but he helped get the word around. So I wanted to our neighbors in our neighborhood. So I appreciate you, Sean. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to our next storyteller, who is Jamina. She is going to also be sharing a story on everyday grit and growth. So, Jamina, are you on the line right now? Chaz, let's make sure that Jamina's line is unmuted if she's here. I don't see her name in the list just yet. She might be joining us in a little bit. So in the meantime, we are going to introduce our next storytelling pair. I am gonna just preface this by saying that, again, We the People stage is a space where we like to really hone, elevate, and share diverse stories to create a more empathetic and connected tomorrow. I think we're definitely achieving that mission here just by creating a little bit of connection during this time of, increased isolation. I know some people are hitting the beaches and doing stuff, hopefully in groups of 25 or less, but we're here tonight and we're together, so I appreciate your presence. Typically, our events happen in their attic space. You see that kind of like stairwell going up there. It's got amazing brick walls. Love it. We usually have featured storytellers. So we still have featured storytellers tonight, but they're usually solo acts. Tonight, we really wanted to encourage that sense of community and interaction that we naturally get in the physical space by giving people the opportunity to sort of dialogue and share stories in a group setting. So that our next storytelling group is a duo, and they're friends of mine, new friend, older friend. Marshall James Kavanaugh is a well-known poet here in Philly. He has a very interesting story, which he will be sharing with you. And Lindo, yes, is also a poet, phenomenal content. You should go check them both out on Instagram. Their Instagram handles are on their graphics. They can also drop it right in the chat feature, but stay up to date with what they're doing. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Marshall, and Lindo. Chaz, can you please make sure that the lines are unmuted? Just speak up, Marshall and Lindo, if you are able to be heard.
Here we go. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hey, how
Um,
are you?
I'm doing good. Marshall is just trying. There we go.
Right. I think I'm on.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you. Lindo, I don't know how you were wearing a sweatshirt, homie. Like, what are you doing right now?
I'm always in the hood. That's just my thing.
I can't. You were making me sweat even more. Just watch. Okay. We won't talk about that. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Definitely feeling the summer.
I'm trying to hold on to my joy as much as I'm trying to hold on to my makeshift backdrop.
Oh, I see it sliding.
Yeah, it's just going to happen. I try my best, but my best sometimes doesn't impress most.
That's okay. That's okay. We're going to work with what we have because we're all trying to make it through this. So why don't you tell, oh yeah, Mark says his AC is running out. I really wish I had put my AC unit in before this, but Marshall, Lindo, please take it away. Bless us and, let us know what story is that you're going to be sharing with us tonight.
Cool. Yeah, well, I am Marshall James Kavanaugh. I'm Dream Poet for Hire. You might know me from Rittenhouse Square. I set up pretty often when we're not in quarantine and type poems for people on demand. I've also been, a traveling poet, traveled around the country, spent a lot of time performing around Philly and around other venues in the area. Met Lindo over time, and we've shared the space. We've shared the non-digital stage as Poets for Peace, which was a tour that went around the country with a bunch of different poets in 2017 through 2019. And yeah, let Lindo introduce himself.
My name is Lindo. Yes, I'm a spoken word artist. Very familiar to the spoken word scene in Philadelphia, and I have built a great friendship as well as just like, partnership in a very great capacity with Marshall as far as just touring, doing shows together, pitching ideas and bouncing ideas. And one of the projects that we have been like working on in this, digital time is Magic Manifestation, which I'm going to allow Marshall to explain a little bit more about.
Yeah, so I mean, Magic Manifestations. A poet who types in a park finds out he can't go to the park anymore safely. But I feel like poetry is just as essential, So worked out with a few collaborator friends from around the city as well as around the country this idea of doing these live streams where instead of just doing performance-based art, we actually do similar to what I do in the park, live request line. So almost like Total Request Live for the poets and artists and creators out there. And similar to how I perform poems, we've just been working on, you know, the simple like catch of pick a topic and we'll create something. We'll manifest some magic, manifest by request. So yeah, with Lindo, we've been, you know, we're both spoken word artists, we're both poets. We've been doing poetry on demand with our community here in Philly mostly, and really creating this space that, you know, it goes beyond like what we're saying or like what our words are transmuting from the topics. It goes into creating this space that, you know, for 2 months we haven't been able to gather in a room together, but yet we can gather in rooms like this and see each other's faces and talk about the current events that are happening around us, and really put them through, like, I like to think like a poet, like think of a poet as someone who takes like I guess like the collective thought and turns it into something beautiful or transmutes it into something that's useful.
I vibe with that, and I think you have a fan in the audience because I see Stephanie dropped into the comments. Marshall, I had you write a poem for my husband on his birthday. It was so beautiful, and you made our day. So happy to see you here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Stephanie.
Isn't it such a beautiful little community, little small world? I know you're famous and you got admirers and everything, but it's nice to see that one of them is in this room. So, Lindo, tell us a little bit about your journey with magic manifestations. What's that been like?
It been to me like me and Marshall talk about it a lot, and you know, at first I was hesitant about this space because this is new territory for me, because Marshall been doing this a lot longer, as far as just like doing impromptu poetry and just making his poetry accessible for communities in ways I haven't yet. I'm so used to just like, you know, performing my poems on the stage and networking afterwards or hanging out afterwards. But Marshall put himself in a space of just immersing himself in the community and allowing people to prompt them on the poetry that they want to hear versus coming with that poem already presented for the community. So when I was doing the sessions with him, it reminded me so much of being like in a writer's room with the innovation of just like the stories coming about because the community is prompting you. So imagine behind the scenes of just like how this script is being created and what is the thought process between the two people that are creating the script, but also being engaged with the people that are going to be familiar with it, not familiar, but a part of the script, or the actors of the scripts are also prompting you of what is needed in the script. So this becomes more of a community poem than anything else I have done, because I'm asked, I need you to talk about this. I really like this line. That didn't really hit for me. This is what really needs to be told about this story, because this story is so much mine as much as it is yours. And when we invited that space, we also found ourselves talking about very vulnerable, heavy topics, and sometimes just very lighthearted moments that embrace both the joy during these times as much as it embraced the tragedy of just like social distancing or just the collective grievances that we're having because we're all losing time, opportunity, people, and just the general idea of quality of life. But there's also joy in these moments of just innovation, of just like, we're now being able to embrace an audience that was not accessible to us before because they don't have to be present in the room. So that allows us to be present with those that are differently able, those that have social anxiety and other ailments that is just like a space can be not as accessible to them all the time.
That's really powerful. And I appreciate the passion in which you're speaking about this, because it's something that I'm very passionate about too. And I know that Elise is passionate about it. So Elise Chang is in the room and she says, Quentin Hart, Lindo Hart, Marshall Hart.
No.
Dream team. Yeah, baby. So thank you, Elise, for dropping in the chat box. Terry says art has never been more essential. Poetry, visual art, music, dance nourishes our souls. And I 100% agree. This interest and this experience of what we're doing in general, outside of even this virtual space, this happy hour and story share, it's a very collaborative space, you know, and that's one of the interesting things that actually brought Terry and Ava and Stephanie and I together, and Gabby's on the line, and I know Kanya's here. There's so many people from the Philly Counts working group that's here. And it was so awesome to see that there was this intention and mindfulness about creating an inclusive space for the community to put their energy somewhere. I think a lot of us found ourselves wanting to do more when we had more time on our hands. You know, I think some people respond in very different ways to what we're going through, and the way that you and Lindo have decided to respond, the way that Philly Counts has decided to respond, you know, and this energy of collaboration is really beautiful. And I'm so grateful to have met everyone at Philly Counts and at University of Penn. I'm definitely grateful to have met you both. I appreciate your early support of We the People stage when it's like, well, what is that? I mean, it's a cool name, but what is it, right? So thank you for also inviting me onto Magic Manifestations. Tell us a little bit more about this whole co-creation process. What has that been like? And what does the name Magic Manifestations mean to you?
So I think like, the idea is, you know, we're all setting an intention when we gather together. Beyond us like writing poems for people's requests, we also have a community topic. And they're usually like simple words, like let's all focus on this one intent. With the idea that like, you know, collective thought and congregating together and creating together can be like a true medicine of spirit. And just like, yeah, I don't know. It's this beautiful process of creating these spaces where, yeah, I don't know, the healing can happen. You know, it's something that I think Lindo can talk about within, you know, poetry spaces in real life, as far as being a host for readings like reading series like Pecola Breedlove.
So I have worked over the last 5 years to create a safe space for Black artists, and, you know, with the focus on poetry and allowing all Black identities to be welcome in the space, and recognizing that, you know, within the spoken word scene, there's topics that we need to be vulnerable about, we need to come close about, and we need to hold each other about, and we need to hold space for. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years, and I recognize the healing properties of that space, and recognize how, like, so much for so long, I've been finding safety in poetry, because I was able to express my ideas in a ways of just like not it being interrupted by what I would say like white ideas or white microaggressions or anything else, and just allow it to be without having to focus on other voices interrupting it, and finding joy in that existence, in a sense what I like to describe as a Black joy, in the sense of just like thinking about myself, celebrating without any idea of oppression or, you know, taken away from it. So it is the joy of just like walking into the store, not being followed, and those other things, not always looked upon as a hinder to the environment, or just being simply valued, or not feeling the need to just like hide my anger or upsetness sometimes. And that's what that space provided for so many Black poets and, you know, collectively Black artists all together. And Marshall had asked me to share a story that focused both on just like how my art is a safe space, but also sometimes when individuals are engaging in my art, it becomes an unsafe space in a certain sense. Because sometimes people's identity of freedom is an identity that's built on oppression and silencing those voices, even though this space is for all of us and we all own this space. So I'm going to share a story that is then going to go into a poem that may sound like a story, but you're going to recognize both transitions. So I have done a lot of like activism work, and some of the activism work is running fundraisers to refuse fascism and recognize it in every parts of our American life. And these are monthly like showcases where it's just 3 artists that present things that are on the topic with their art or not on the topic, to allow us to just be in a space and mind that we're together in this idea of just refusing fascism and what does that mean. In the midst of like me hosting a show, I introduce an artist whose identity is white, as well as someone that is a woman, identifies as a woman, and they played the ukulele, they sung 3 songs, and then they ended their set with no discrepancies or anything that hindered their voice in that very moment. Then I did a poem. In the area that we're in South Philly near a park, and the park often has football practices that are going on, at the same time we're doing this event, and we're just holding space for both things. We're in the backyard of this establishment, they're in the park, which is, right across the street. So just to give you an idea of the vibe and the environment that we're in. And in the midst of me just sharing poems and stuff like that, there's a few neighbors that come out. One was an older white couple, and 2 were just older white individuals. And as in the midst of me sharing my poem, I'm recognizing from the back of the audience, gesturing to me to quiet down. Just to give you an idea of the volume of my voice, I'm not performing with a mic. I'm also recognizing that the other spaces that I'm sharing it with, as far as it being a neighborhood, as far as it being 5 p.m. on a day, and all those things I'm being considerate of, they gestured me to quiet down, and then they talked over me and said that, we're all for whatever y'all for, but you're also infringing on our rights to just be home right now. And it was one of those moments where I find myself being triggered because I'm so upset, because the performer before me had an amp and was using a mic, an amp needed for their guitar and a microphone because they have a more soft-spoken voice than myself. And it was not the same type of attention given to them. It was not the same type of aggression towards their voice. And it made me think about my identity, and made me think of just like, what do I do in this moment so I can make sure I'm considering a community that's outside of me? Because like my feelings hurt, but right now I have to host an event. I have to, fundraise money to refuse racism, to combat these type of issues and microaggressions in the world. So I'm thinking to myself, I often kill people with kindness. So in that very moment, I'm like, oh, thank you so much for holding me accountable. I really appreciate, you giving me notice of this. I'm going to be moving through my set with more consideration and quiet down for the folks that are living in the neighborhood. As I continue in a more soft-spoken voice, I am then gestured down to even quiet down more, to the point where I'm just out of the poem now. The poem was my safe space, and I was hoping to, go back into the poem feeling just as safe and holding myself accountable moving forward. But then I just felt unsafe, because it was just a moment where I was just like, there's so much pressure as far as like responsibility that I hold of this event, hosting it. But then there's also a responsibility of myself of just making sure I get home tonight. And what does that look like? Because if they do call the cops, I don't want that interaction. I don't know how to unclench my fist in that moment. I don't know what that means. So I just, in my set, and I apologized to them. And then I gathered myself together to introduce the next artist. The poems that they had grievances with, that they felt as though were too loud, are the poems I'm sharing now. My favorite parts of my day is when I get to experience joy with my nephew. When we get to throw back the football until the rain comes. And when the rain comes, we go inside, we watch cartoons. In the midst of us changing the channel, we see Donald Trump sit next to Obama. And every time I hear and see Donald Trump, I hear and see a bounty hunter black in plantation times that used to catch a runaway slave, bring them back to the auction block or plantation, or get a free man, rip up his freedom papers, bring him back to the auction block or plantation. Every time I think of the plantation, I think of the crime bill and how many people are put in the prison system as if it was a plantation. Every time I saw Obama, I saw a free man. Holding back tears, I looked my nephew in the eye and said to myself, it's a new day. It's a new day. Obama looked like a free man giving his house to the bounty hunter after endorsing the former slave owner that put us on plantations. He's trying to convince us that this is as American as apple pie, as if we didn't get a slice of it at the dinner table with Jim Crow, Uncle Sam, Uncle Tom, giving us the Trayvon verdict. We are hurt, we are scarred, and America wants us to cover up our scars with our emotional makeup. You know, grin and bear, maybe put up a fist in silence. Well, there have been too many riots of the unheard. We finna turn up the volume of the speaker, make a lot of noise, break a lot of glass ceilings, stump on the floor, leave the ground breaking, because we've been carrying America on our aching lynch back for too long. And tell me, what's more patriotic than that? To love a country that keeps on reminding you that it hates you. I mean, the electoral college look like the red carpet for the KKK. And we finna cut a rug, do a 1-2 step that leave footprints of a giant, because they trying to abort for a nation. We're gonna abort that ignorance. Planned Parenthood is to raise sons and daughters to a new day to come. And I know they're gonna come for me, asking me to say sorry, where I've been too unapologetic lately, because I have too much faith in my culture, too much faith in my people, and too much faith in a new day to come. And I tell y'all something, I have been working too hard on my name to see it be a hashtag in the morning. I'm grateful every morning I don't wake up a hashtag, a trend on top of the tragedy, a black and brown body outlined in white, red blood, water and concrete because of red blood, red water and concrete because of shades of blue. White lies defining how black lives matter, my God. Let's raise sons like morning. Too many sons we mourning, too many raises in the sun. And there's been a war on colors. Ever since we've been coloring and coloring books, they've been booking colors and books of obituaries. You should be worried. Because even those that survive lose years of their life in beige and gray boxes with no windows. When they come out, you can barely see their souls of their windows. They look lost. And I have lost myself in tears, found myself here crying because I haven't yet grieved over Trayvon. He looked so much like me when I saw him. I thought I died. Became a hashtag in the morning, a trend on top of the tragedy, a black and brown body outlined in white, red blood, water and concrete because of shades of blue. White lies are finding how black lives matter, my God. Let's raise sons like morning. Too many sons we mourning, too many raises in the sun, too many raises in the sun. My God, please don't let me be a hashtag in the morning. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that if we were in the physical space and everyone was unmuted, that you would be getting a lot of feedback right now. I see a lot of people jumping in the chat. So if you have any feedback for our story sharers, please continue to engage in the chat. I see that Jennifer Elise says, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, Lindo. Jennifer says, Lindo, thank you for sharing about your safe place and share your vulnerability and creative mind. I'm honored to have heard your story today. Imagine a world where your safe place is reality, open space, and for all for all to see your creativity, love, and beauty. This is so powerful. There's a lot of comments in response to what you both just shared and what you shared, Lindo. So I will leave you to read some more of those amazing comments that everyone is so graciously and generously sharing with the group. So thank you for sharing that to both of you. Thank you for your contribution to the world creatively and with your beautiful energy. We are clearly going through very challenging times right now, very, very challenging times that I can't really speak about right now because I don't want to go into a tangent, but I do appreciate you bringing that element to our program tonight. So thank you both.
For inviting us out.
Thank you, Quentin, for having us. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing your stories tonight.
Yes, yes. Thank you to everyone. Please remember to follow those people that you're connecting with tonight. So you can follow at Lindo, yes, and at Dream Poet for Hire to keep up with their happenings, with Magic Manifestations and all of the wonderful creative work that they are bringing into the world. We have another creative spirit in the room. I know that had a little bit trouble finding Jamina prior to us jumping into and hearing from Marshall and Lindo. But Jamina, are you able to speak right now? Are you unmuted? I saw you in the room. Might be, I see you on screen. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hey.
Yes.
How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for letting me join.
Absolutely. So we're having, I'm getting a little bit of choppiness on my end from you. So if you could move a little bit closer to your router, that might help the situation. But we can see you right now. So I know you said that you're going to be sharing a story on everyday grit and growth. So we'd love to hear from you. Can you hear me? No?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. Take it away.
Hi. I'm Jamina. I guess I'll talk about it after, if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's a little glitchy, so you.
Oh man.
We're having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
All right, try to move closer to your router, and we'll come back to you. All right.
Okay.
All right. We'll try one more time because it looks like it looks like you're good right now. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Hi. Everything's still good?
Everything's good, still good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jamina. So I am 23-year-old Philadelphia-based artist. I infuse poetry with music, mainly for culture and to help other aching souls. Basically, the poem I'm going to share is just about me using hard work to find joy and peace within myself, and just saying that it takes hard work. It's not like just, it doesn't happen overnight. And it's just, I've been trying to be happy since I was a child, since like single digit numbers. So this is just me finally finding it in my 20s. So.
All right. Well,
all right. So I will go ahead and share it. It's called February 26th, It's from an album I just released. And I'll just share it.
Sounds
okay.
good.
All right. This joy thing don't come easy. You think one breakthrough equals freedom. Well, I'll tell you what God made his tree from, where the apples don't fall far. I feel when, beware of the devils in the flesh. I feel when somebody tell my mom she deserved better, still does. I feel when if you knew what I knew, you would spark green too. I feel when you dip your toes in the wet sands near the ocean tide. I feel when high tide. I feel my roots heavy. I feel when there are so many broken shells at the shore, it could take hours, days, weeks, years to find one that's just about whole. And when you finally do, excitement. And you want to show it off to the world. I feel aware of my thoughts, reasons, actions. I feel more free. I feel more fight. Later, I feel self-love and at ease for the first time in my life. I feel when joy and sad. I feel when gratitude. I feel when sky dives. I feel when splatter paints. I feel me. I feel when bird and tree. I feel when pond and sea. I feel most human feeling things. I feel life. I feel me. I feel me. I feel life. I feel me. I feel life. I feel. And that's the end of the poem.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
You just
Thank you.
So much joy hearing your words. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was so beautiful. And you know, sometimes you can just hear sunshine in people's voices, and I definitely experienced that with your poem. I say, beautiful, Jamina. Love the imagery you use. And then
thank you all so much.
Ava just said, so good. Thank you for sharing. And it's such a gift. We are actually at a point in our program where we actually have open share. So we're going to take a short break from hearing from our featured storytellers and open up the floor and ask you to open up your microphones to kind of just give us a vibe, a feel for what you've been experiencing here tonight with us. What has anyone has shared landed on you and resonated with you? I'd love to hear from the rest of the group. You feel free to just speak at your leisure, and if you need to be unmuted, just give me a visual cue if you're on camera. Chaz will do her best to unmute you as you would like to speak. That's all right. That's all right. Or we can.
I'll hop in.
Okay. All right.
I just want to say that as a white person living in Philly and seeing what's been going on across the country, and it's not just recent events, we all know that. This is a historical trend of just discrimination and violence against people of color. And I think probably a lot of white people could relate to me in feeling a little bit lost of what I can do to help. And Stephanie had mentioned it like way at the beginning of this event, that often it feels like one voice gets lost. But especially during these times when we're reminded that like the people around us are still really, really suffering, I do feel it's so important to use our individual voices. And I also feel, again, so privileged to be a part of this conversation, this event, and to be able to hear all of your stories. And so I really just hope to kind of continue this collaboration between Philly Counts and We the People, and hopefully get more events like this going so that we can hear even more people's stories and try to come up with solutions for how we can work together towards equality in our society.
Thank you for sharing, Ava. I really appreciate you putting your voice back in the room and speaking on that topic. I, as a Black man, have been challenged in this time. I'm working on a short film project called Breathe. So when I saw that George Floyd could not breathe, that his neck was being pressed into the cement in such an animalistic and brutal way, and his pleas were going completely unheard, you know? It was very, very, very challenging for me as someone who lives here in Philadelphia. And, you know, I'm not, even if I was physically there and holding that camera that young lady was holding, to hold those police officers accountable, then I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I could have done. I don't know if I would have been empowered to do anything, which is why I think we're seeing so many people react with protest and with social media posts and with anger, because you're right, it's been going on for a very long time, since before cell phones. And now we're beginning to see a lot of what people have talked about. And I think that equalizes the playing field in some way, because if you're not exposed to it, if you don't have, if you're not a Black person and you don't have Black friends, or you don't live in an area where this sort of thing seems to happen, then you might not really be offered the opportunity to understand. So to hear from Jamina and from Lindo is a view, you know, it's a opportunity to gain understanding, to bridge that understanding. And I don't have an answer for you, Ava. I don't know what we can do, but I know that the intention has to be backed by action. The intention to understand has to be backed by action. The intention to understand has to be backed by reaching out and really investing in those channels of communication. It's interesting that Jamina had a little bit of technical issues with the connection, because as a poet, I tend to see things in metaphor. And if our wires aren't built to handle the intense power that's being demanded of them, then there's going to be glitches. And I think that's oftentimes what we encounter when we are faced with something new. It's a confrontation that rubs up against our preconceived notions of what society is. It's a confrontation that threatens our idea of what America is and who we're supposed to be in relation to each other. And I think that this is an opportunity, this event is an opportunity for us to build new connections and to build understanding by listening to each other's story. So at the very least, you're doing that. And I appreciate you having that intention and being open to like seeing, you know, what more we can do after this. But I think this is a start. It's difficult, challenging times. Gabby was like, you know, we spoke earlier today, and she said, I can't respond to that question of how are you without acknowledging what we're going through right now. And I think that was very real. So I do appreciate you, Gabby, encouraging me to confront those emotions that I was going through as well, because, you know, this is a space that I create for other people to share their story. So I tried my best to step aside and just allow that sharing to happen. But sometimes it's just, you know, you're not being authentic if you're not being real with what you're experiencing in the moment. So I appreciate your encouragement there too. And thank you so much, Jamina, for sharing. I'll stop rambling. I'll get off my soapbox. And
I would like to share.
Yeah.
I've just been really inspired, I think, all day. I was having a really hard day. So I want to thank you all for coming together and creating a space for this. This artistic expression is it's so cathartic, right? And to hear the way that other people feel and relate, so deeply is a reassuring feeling, even if what we're relating to is pain. And I'm just really trying to hold space. Like you said, I think it's really easy to kind of desensitize ourselves to the images. There's just constant messages, and many of them are violent, right? Even if it's subtle or subliminal. And so unpacking that can just be a full-time job. And I think that it's really important that we acknowledge that work that we have to do, all of us really, every day, because otherwise I think the rest of it becomes impossible. And I think I was really moved, Linda, when you shared, because I think as a Black woman, I definitely live in fear of this angry Black woman stereotype. And it's funny because it makes me mad that I'm in fear of this angry stereotype, right? I mean, there's absolutely valid reasons for us to be angry right now. I think I saw a post today that was like, Black people have every right to burn down the America that they built. And that was just so powerful to me, right? Like, if for all of these hundreds of years, you're just not going to acknowledge what's happened, and now you're confused as to why people are angry. But it's not like it's something that happened 400 years ago and never happened again, right? Like, we see this every day. And the peaceful protests they're not working, right? I mean, it's not that we haven't been doing that. One of the things that I think that we can do, if you have the means, right, is to contribute financially. I think is huge when we think about the redistribution, how wealth was accumulated in this country, and redistributing that. I think I learned a lot from the Bread and Roses Community Fund. So if anybody hasn't participated or heard of that, I encourage you to check it out. They really empowered me to talk about an incredibly emotional subject in a way that was logical, and also in a way that was also to acknowledge that it's okay to have emotion in that space, and all of those things were really important. So if you're looking for ways to get involved, there's a lot of really amazing organizations in Philadelphia, and I would love to talk with you all more about that. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for offering a next step for that intention. I see that Chris.
Yeah, I would like to share some reaction to both Lindo and Yamina. And I think it is encouraging to see young artists, especially of the spoken word, talking about a frame in which change is inherent and explicit and implicit. The whole notion, the line that I don't want to be a hashtag, and the question of Yamina talking about reconstructing a fragmented shell that's been beaten up by the waves and the water hitting against the rocks and then shattering into 1,000 pieces, or putting it back together, whatever time it takes to do that. So that's a kernel of change, because it's not sufficient to interpret the reality that we see every day. I think that artists have an obligation to lead to the change of it. So it's not enough just to narrate what you see, but okay, so it's wrong. So what do we do about it? We need to change it. So, and I think that the arts have a responsibility to lead the rest of us into channeling our energies, our anger, because this is a time to be angry, but it's also a time to show that you're angry, not to be reserved about it. But artists have an opportunity to help us channel all of that energy and that rage in a way that will actually change the conditions that we face today.
Yes. Absolutely. I really am vibing off of this exchange. Thank you so much for sharing, Pedro, Gabby, Ava. I don't want to blabber on. So if anyone else wants to share, you can drop in the chat box, but your lines are open. You can definitely share on the mic and on camera as well. So one last offer. Anyone else would like to share? All right. All right. I appreciate everyone putting their energy in the room and in the chat box. We are going to transition in just a moment over to our next storyteller, who again is a longtime friend of We the People stage. Relative to my 32 years on this planet, we are new friends, but I feel like we have been friends for a very long time. His name is Mr. Jimmy White IV. He's been a very passionate supporter of speaking and mentoring of We the People stage. So I do appreciate you, brother. Thank you for joining us today. But before I turn on the microphone and turn it over to you, Pedro had said something that definitely resonated with me. And I think that artists 100% are responsible. We're all responsible. But artists are visionaries, and they serve an important role in our society. Everything that we experience today, Marshall and I were talking on Magic Manifestations, his last one that he had hosted this past weekend, or the last one that I was part of at least. And he had said, we had just said in exchange, I don't remember which one said it, but it was stated that everything that exists today exists because somebody dreamt it up first. We are existing within the dreams and visions of other people who have come before us. So as an artist, as a visionary, we all serve that channel of bringing into vision something that may have never been perceived before, bringing into vision ideas that may have never been connected before, and I think that, I do this for We the People stage, for the community, for the magic that happens in collaboration and in community, because we all exist in relationship. None of us are isolated. And so it's important for those of us in the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection to really be our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper, to really hold each other responsible and check in on one another. And if one of us can't speak up because there's a metaphorical or physical knee on our neck, then I think it's really important for us to hold space and make sure that that person is heard and make sure that that person can breathe, even if it's just in our actions that we sow into the future. So I said I wasn't going to get on my poetry soapbox, but Gabby got me going because my homie, we only met once in physical. We only met once in the real world, but we've been talking and emailing for a couple months now. So I definitely feel like I know her, and I appreciate your energy, Gabby. Thank you for being a part of facilitating tonight's event. So without further ado, I'll step aside for the real preacher of tonight, Mr. Jimmy White IV. That's you, Jimmy. You're on, brother.
What's up, good sir? How you making out? What's up, We the People? What's up, Philly Counts? What it do? I'm loving it. I am loving it. Q, stay on the line for me for a second because I love this hashtag Philly Counts. Like, I am a South Philly dude. You know that. Born and raised. Like, if you cut me right now, I like bleed cheese whiz or something. kind of South Philly dude I am. But tell me what. Because me and you both transitioned. I was a military guy. I was in the Navy. I was a nuclear electrician on submarines, and I've traveled the world and been blessed. But I always wanted to come home. Like, no matter what I did in the military, I was coming home. You kind of had a similar journey. So why does Philly count to you?
Thank you so much for asking me that question. So my story is that I was born and raised in New Jersey. I went to Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey. I grew up in South Orange, New Jersey. I went to the same school as Zach Braff and Lauryn Hill and Rotimi, and Scissor. So, you know, I got to name drop a little bit because I'm so proud
I see you.
for their success. But my parents both went to Temple. They're both Temple made. They met at Temple University. So my dad was a football player at Temple University when he attended. And as a result, his fanaticism for Temple University resulted in enrolling me in a sport that I hated, Pop Warner football. But, you know, I did it
right
for the community. And we would always take he would always take our Pop Warner football team down to Temple home games, pretty much every single home game. So I was sort of a Philly John from a young age, because we would always eat the Cheese Whiz cheesesteaks. Can't tell you which place we went to. I was, you know, Philly felt like home. So I chose Philly to go to, study marketing, and eventually, at the time, I was a documentarian. I was a journalist, a photojournalist, and I was interning at 3 different magazine companies, one in New York, 2 here in Philly. I wrote for the Temple newspaper. I was pretty confident that I was going to get a job in media after I graduated, so I didn't think it was super important to graduate with a degree in like editing or videography, because that's what I was already doing. Long story short, I graduated in 2010 during another recession. So I didn't get a job in magazines because a lot of magazines were going bankrupt or had hiring freezes. So I ended up in New York, and I came back to Philly after a short stint in Charlotte, as I mentioned, because Philly has so much potential. Philly is so rich with energy. Philly is so much of the brotherly love and sisterly affection, anger, and tension that makes for a rich music and culture, arts and culture environment. Philly's not perfect. Philly's gritty.
Right.
Philly has potential. And I think that it's important for our voices to be heard. So I thought, you know, since I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, then I needed to move back to a city where I can do it. You know, Charlotte wasn't really it, just in terms of the arts and culture scene. It wasn't where I felt I needed to be at the time. So I moved back to Philly to take a job at a radio company. I still worked there during the day, but I wanted to create something of my own to give other creatives and other people who are interested in supporting the arts and culture scene here in Philly the space to do so. I agree with Lindo. It's very important for us to have spaces where, you know, Black voices can be heard and not endangered, you know, not threatened, especially since there's this interesting contrast of Black voices and Black bodies being perceived as threatening and being perceived as worthy of being killed, you know? So I created a brand with, you know, holding a mic in the air that's sort of reminiscent of being empowered, but also reminiscent of, when I was speaking to the graphic designer who's very talented, also a Philly artist. I just love supporting Philly artists all around. Our director of photography, Liam, is a really dope visual artist, but I digress. I was speaking to Lindsay, our graphic designer. I said, I want this fist in this microphone to say empowering. And I want it to look like the Liberty Bell. And then she came up with this really dope design. Initially, the graphic and the writing was supposed to be like Old English, as if it was written with a quill pen or quill feather. And I was like, actually, that feels too old. Can you like make it look more now? And she came up with this really dope graffiti type of writing. So, you know, that's why I came back to Philly to really like start to invest in my art and in my passion. So thank you for asking me that.
That's what's up, family. So it's interesting because, and you talk about the empowering, is that We the People and the We the People stage has empowered me to have a voice. You know, I do a lot of different things. I'm a youth advocate, a veteran advocate. I'm a professional in inner city Philadelphia, and you know, I've always had this hole where I had this message. I had something that I had to get out of me, and for me to be able to present it on the We the People stage and to support and be part of the community, be part of the tribe. I appreciate you, brother. So if no one else tonight say it, I'm gonna say it. I appreciate you. So I actually did something that I never do for any of these type of things, and I actually wrote something down because I'm a minister, I'm spirit led, so I just blah, 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 like whatever the Lord give me, you gonna give me. But I love the theme of Philly Counts, so I wrote. It's not really a poem; it's just a whole bunch of lines that I wrote that said, "I'm so Philly." So go ahead and type in "I'm so Philly" and whatever it is that makes you so Philly. So and you'll get the gist of it real quick, and then Quinn can read some of them. So the first one I got is that I'm so Philly. I'm a 4-for-4 sports fan, even though I know absolutely nothing about hockey. Like I've been to one hockey game my whole life, and I don't know near not of nothing that happened the whole time. Like all I heard was goal, and I was excited. That's all I did. I'm so Philly that I refuse to order anything on a menu that says Philly in front of it. So don't try to make me buy no Philly cheesesteak, no Philly pretzel, no Philly water ice, no Philly nothing. If it got Philly in front of it, I'm not ordering from the menu. Because if you're from Philly, you ain't even got to say you from Philly. It's implied. You understand what I'm talking about, honey? My wife understands what I'm talking about, even if y'all don't. And then I'm so Philly that when I put scrapple on my plate because I thought it was sausage, I still eat it out of respect for the scrapple. Anybody ever done that? Picked up, see, so Chaz did that before. When you picked up the scrapple and you thought it was sausage and you was excited to get back to your table and plate and eat that sausage and it was scrapple, you still got to eat it because you so Philly. All right, I'm getting there. I'm so Philly. I remember Club McDonald's at Temple campus. You remember Club McDonald's, Q, up on North Broad Street up there with the let out right across from the white dorm, which was called White Dorm. I might have got kicked out of that dorm a couple times in my day.
Locals, that's where they went.
That's it. That was the spot. I'm so Philly that the only official summer anthem is Summertime by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. And you got to say DJ Jazzy Jeff in the Fresh Prince. Don't tell me no Will Smith made that song. Did you hear the hook? DJ Jazzy Jeff did that. I can see some of y'all understand what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm talking about, honey? Yes. All right, I appreciate the affirmation right there.
Amen from the choir.
There you go. I'm so Philly that even when I read the word dollars, I have to add sucks to it to bring back the balance in the world. Like even when I read dollars, I gotta say suck after it. I'm so Philly that I'm so Philly that my son's first name was Boo, and it was immediately followed by him throwing me a battery because his milk was too cold. Because that's my son didn't appreciate his milk being too cold. That's Philly. Then my last one is I'm so Philly that Gritty is my spirit animal, and I live vicariously through him over the internet. So that's my I'm so Philly. So go ahead in the chat menu, go ahead and type why you are so Philly and how you're so Philly. But I believe that is so important that Philly counts in the census is so important because we have to be counted. We have to be heard. We have to have a voice. This week was really, really tough for me. And Q, to be completely honest, there was a point in this week where I was thinking about bailing out and canceling because when I think of somebody not breathing, this week I felt like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk. And as somewhat of a youth and veteran advocate, people expect me to talk. People expect me to speak out and be a voice for change. And the honest truth is I just couldn't come up with the words. It was so tough. And then the foundation that I do a lot of work for, the Travis Manning Foundation, which is a local veteran service organization that is now national. And their motto is empowering veterans and Gold Star family members to build character in the future leaders of America, which is our youth. And they take veterans like me, and I go talk to kids all over the city of Philadelphia about character and leadership from my time in service, my time as a minister, my time as a father, and my time as a husband. And they sent me a text today, and they said, Jimmy, you know, the president of the foundation wants to use one of your speeches for a social media campaign about fighting racism and fighting to have a voice for African Americans. And that really hit me because I couldn't find the words, and here it is. 2 years ago I gave a speech, and they found the words, my words, and they put it out there. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about faith, and I want to talk to you and tell you a story about speaking things into existence. So when I was coming up as a professional, I did very well, and I got promoted, and I, as you can probably see from the background, this is my backyard. You know, I got the nice house in the suburb, the 2 cars, the 1 convertible for the wife, and I got 3 amazing kids. And I'm kind of living that American dream, right? But there was always this emptiness, this void that I had inside me, what I realized what it was that it was me not doing service to my community, me not doing service to Philly, me not being a voice for veterans, me not speaking up and just, you know, caring about me succeeding, but not my entire culture succeeding. So when that happened, I found the Travis Main Foundation. They gave me a voice, and they let me speak all over the world, well, not all over the US. And then 2017, they invited me to their black tie event. So the black tie event was in Center City, Philadelphia. It was at the Union League. I don't know if you've ever been to the Union League, but the Union League is so fly. Like it is from tip to toe. It is like the truth all throughout of it. Old, new, it was the truth. And it was me and my wife's first black tie event that we ever went to. So I got the hat, I had the tails, I had the tuxedo on. I was killing them for the Instagram moms. And then was killing it. I was killing it, stepping out on the toes. I had a wooden bow tie. I was killing it. And we show up, and I don't know how many of y'all are Hamilton fans, but me and my family were big Hamilton fans. And there's this one song called "The Room Where It Happens," and I walk into this place, CEOs and all this other stuff, and I was like, in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. You're like, I was in the room, and like people were coming up to me because there wasn't a lot of us brothers. So like everyone's like, oh, I want to hear your story. I want to hear about you. What are you doing? I've heard so much about the work that you're doing in the city. I was like, it was in, and we loved it. And me and my wife had the most amazing time. And then they got to the part where they had the award ceremony. And in the award ceremony, another Navy veteran, Red Ramos, amazing guy. Look him up when you get a chance. Red Ramos was a third-class horseman in the military, and he actually, unfortunately, lost his leg in the Iraq War. And when he lost his leg, he decided that he was going to do empowering things to empower veterans and to speak to youth all across the U.S. He actually did the Amazing Race, and I don't know what he did in it, but he obviously did pretty good, and he won the award. So Red is up here accepting the national award from the Travis Main Foundation for all the advocacy work and everything that he's doing. And me and my wife are sitting in the audience, and I'm looking up at him, and I'm like, man, this guy is killing it. He's doing everything that, you know, I would want to do. And he stood up and he said something that struck me. He said, you know, I was here at this gala the year before, and I never thought I'd be standing up on this stage. And that struck me. And I remember we had an amazing night. The night was the bomb diggity. And I don't even think anybody says bomb diggity no more, but it was the truth. And me and my wife, we rented a fancy hotel downtown. We went to the hotel. We had an amazing time, and we were getting ready to go to bed. And I turned to my wife and I said, honey, that's going to be me on that stage one day. And she just affirmed it. And she said, all right, then make it do what it do. And I never did stuff like that. I never spoke those things. I'm a faithful man. I believe that God will set you up for success. But that day I had this calling, and it was something that inside me, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to tell my wife about it, and I had to say it out loud. And I said, I'm gonna be up on that stage, and I'm going to be accepting that award. And when I do, I'm not going to accept it for myself. I want to accept it for all the people that want to be encouraged and be empowered the same way that Red encouraged me. So fast forward, literally 3 months later, in March of 2018, and I get a phone call from the president of the foundation, and she said, Jimmy, we selected you as our national award winner for the Travis Mannion Foundation for all the work you've done for veterans and youth, and specifically for the work you did for honoring the athletic director for Parkland High School when he passed away. So what a lot of people don't know is that when the Parkland shooting happened, a lot of the police scattered, but the athletic director for the school, Chris Hickson, he was the safety patrol officer. He actually walked into the school and confronted the shooter. And the shooter shot him, and the shooter killed him. But what the media didn't say was that even though he was shot, he still barricaded himself up against the door because the shooter was trying to get to other students. So he gave his life and he sacrificed so those kids can continue to live and continue to serve. And that echoes the Travis Mannion Foundation motto. And its motto is simply this: it's if not me, then who? And at the end, I'm gonna give you guys a call to action for you guys to begin to live out that mantra. So she called me up and she said that you're gonna get this award. And when it did, it kind of shook me and it shocked me because I had spoken it to existence. And it was the first time I ever did that in my life. And when I went up for the award the following December, there were so many people to thank and so many stuff to do. The only thing I could think of doing was making sure that I thanked my beautiful, lovely, intelligent wife, because I married up and she was also pregnant with my third kid at the time and looked amazing in her dress. And I said, honey, I love you more than I love cooked food. So there's no bigger compliment in my life, because if anybody knows my Instagram, if you see my Instagram, all I do, I eat a lot of food. I'm an Instagram
food pics on that timeline.
I'm a Philly food. So baby, I love you more than I love cooked food. All right, this is that.
I'm waiting for this steak to be thrown at your face or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it is. At the end of the day, what I learned is that when I have this inside of me, when I'm provoked, when I am inspired, when I am pushed to a limit where I have to take action, and I'm given this vision. I love the fact that earlier you were talking about vision. I was given this vision and I spoke it into existence. Right now we're at a point where we have to speak some things into existence. I have a 13-year-old son who is 5'9" and like 180 pounds. I had to sit him down and talk to him and tell him that, son, you're not seen as a little kid. You are not seen as an innocent child. You are not seen as this fragile or happy-go-lucky kid that I know that you are. My son literally could not kill a bug. Like literally. Like I said, son, kill a bug. He said, no, daddy, I can't do it. But sorry. But I had to sit down and talk to him, and I had to say, look, son, you can't do the same things that your white friends do at school. You can't say the same things. You can't act the same way. I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry to be the one to have to break your innocence. I'm sorry to be this voice right now, because all I want to do is tell you that I love you. But I gotta tell you that I love you and I care about you, and I don't want to see you get hurt. the very same conversation that my mother had with me when I was 13 years old. That I had to walk around differently. I had to talk differently. I had to act differently in front of the cops. We in the hood, we call it code switching, where you got to switch your code and switch your voice. Where, you know, kids used to say that, yo, Jimmy, you speak white, you talk white. Like, no, you don't understand. I got to switch that code so I can get to where I want to get to in my life. So right now we are all angry. We are all upset, but guess what? You got a voice. And just like we do on this We the People stage, it's time for you to speak up and use your voice. And not just to use your voice just to be heard out loud so everyone can react to it. You need to be a voice of change. Be an instrument of change. I like to say it like this, that in your life, you must align your passion with your dedication so that you can achieve your purpose in life. And your purpose in life is never to serve yourself and your own well-being. Your purpose in life will always be to serve other people. And there's one last part of it that I don't talk about. It's kind of like a purpose triangle. And at the very top of that purpose triangle is a term called grace. Grace is a gift that you receive that you have never earned. And when Jesus walked this earth, he went around dispensing grace from place to place, from miracle to miracle. And let me tell you, Jesus was one of the most gangster people you ever met. Like Jesus was so gangster that he kept the party going by turning water into wine. And when he turned into wine, the crowd was like, "Oh man, are you serious? You left the best wine for last?" That's how gangster Jesus was. Jesus was so gangster that when he went to the synagogue and they was out there doing merchant work out in the courtyard where people were supposed to worship, Jesus went and caused a riot. Someone turned to your neighbor and said, Jesus caused a riot. Jesus caused a riot and turned over the tables so that people can have a place to worship. What kind of instrument of change are you? One more last one for Jesus was so gangster. Jesus was so gangster that someone came to Jesus and said, "Hey, Jesus, I want to be a follower of you. I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to rock. Let's make it do what it do." Jesus said, "Cool. Drop everything you're doing and come with me." The follower was like, "Hold up, Jesus. You a little fast. You a little fast for me. I got to wait for my mother and my father to die. As soon as they pass away and I bury them and I honor them, I'll take care of you." Jesus was so gangster that he turned around. He said, "Let the dead bury the dead." Turn to somebody and say, "Man, if someone say that, that's the most gangster line that I've ever heard in my life. Let the dead bury the dead and come on and be an instrument of change." But back to the pyramid. So purpose, grace. You, every single person that's in the sound of my voice, you must be a dispenser of grace. How can we enact change? Do something nice for somebody for no reason at all. Be the example that everyone else wants to set and to be the standard in the bar. I told you, I actually brought it out. So this award kind of heavy. This award is awesome. It's amazing. But the honest truth, this award was never ever for me. It was for everybody that sacrificed and laid the example before me, and for every young person after me and every veteran after me to see, so they can be examples, so they can achieve what I achieved and try to get to that standard. So you, be the grace that's needed in this world. Be the light that was dampened out by other people. So here's my call to action to you. "If not me, then who?" was the last words that Travis Mann uttered before he went to his tour of Iraq, before he was killed by an enemy sniper. That is the motto of the foundation, and that's the motto that I live by every single day. So if not you, who is going to stand up to racism? If not you, who is going to stand up to sexism? If not you, who is going to stop that cop from being on that guy's neck? If not you, who's going to use their privilege to help somebody that has no privilege at all? If not you, who's going to be the next generation of leaders to make real change in this world? If not me, then who? Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Yes, Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy just took us to church. You see, that's why I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna say anything because, you know, I'm a code switch, and I don't know if people are ready for that. But you're right. You're right. We gotta bring our full selves. And you took us to church, Cheese Whiz. I think I see some chat box lighting up. Elise says, yes. I saw some verbal cues from Miss Shauna and Petros. They were like, yeah. Amen from the church.
Appreciate y'all.
We have some, I don't know if y'all want to unmute and read your I'm So Philly, but I can read some, and I've also given you guys, my computer is like freezing, so I don't know if my buttons are actually clicking, but I just clicked unmute all. So if you would like to go ahead and share, just jump right in. I'll read from Gabby first. I am so Philly, I give you a mural arts tour.
Oh, let's do it. That was on my list. I was so close. I was so close to putting that on there. I love Philly mural arts.
I need the mural arts in my life.
Yes.
I need that. Shikanya says, shout out to Temple News. Yes, Temple News. Whitehall, sounds like Kanye's been to Club McDonald's.
Oh yeah, Club McDonald's the truth.
Ava says, I'm so Philly, I'll recite the words, Club Onyx. Every time I hear them on the radio. Yes, Club Onyx.
Club Onyx, let's go back, man.
Sadly to say I've been there. I work for Urban Radio Station and I function as their marketing director and event planner. So when we had New Year's Eve, I'm sorry to say, Jimmy, I was not in the church. I was in Club Onyx.
Look, I wasn't always there. So.
Look, okay, look, we all have a past. All right, thank you. Thank you, Ava. Lendo says, I'm so Philly, I refuse to eat cheesesteaks anywhere else, and I will call you a big head to your face.
Thank you.
You guys can read the comments for the unedited version. Marshall says, I am so Philly, I ride my bicycle everywhere.
Good morning.
I'm glad that you are still with us. I hope you're wearing a helmet and not that very cool hat that you chose.
There's still bikes everywhere. That's different. That's different.
Yeah. Lindo says, I'm so Philly. When you ask me where I am from, I say Philly. Never Pennsylvania.
Right?
LOL for real.
I was going to have one that said, you know, if someone, I'm so Philly that if someone tells me they from Cherry Hill and they think they from Philly, that I had to call them out. I had to call them out.
Yes, yes. I made that mistake once when somebody asked me where I'm from.
We love you. We appreciate you. But
look, they said where I'm from. I didn't know exactly how to respond, but apparently every Philadelphian understands that question.
Yep.
I did not. So I said Philly. They're like, you lie. You a lie. Because if you say you're from Philly and not a neighborhood, you're clearly not from Philly.
Clearly not from Philly.
Kanye says, Jungle Beats, holla at me. Ava says, Jungle Beats. All right, so thank you so much for engaging. I definitely agree. Philly counts for so many different reasons, and clearly I'm jumping on the bandwagon and telling people that I'm from Philly too. So
we own you now. You've been here for a minute. We own you.
Thank you. It's so important that we make sure that every Philadelphian is counted, which is one of the reasons why we've partnered with Philly Counts in the 2020 census, because one person, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but one person who fills out the census represents approximately $21,000 worth of funding. So it is super important that every Philadelphian is counted in the 2020 census to ensure that each neighborhood, yes, neighborhood, even though I said I'm from Philly and not a neighborhood, it's important that each neighborhood gets this appropriate amount of funding to recover from the social and economic impacts of COVID-19.
A lot of cheesesteaks.
Yes, that represents a lot of cheesesteaks. And as Ava said, it also helps other marginalized communities like the LGBTQ plus community get the resources that they need as well. It really impacts all of us, all the diverse voices and faces of Philly. So thank you Philly Counts for making this happen and partnering with us on this event. Thank you, Jimmy, for getting our spirits fed a little bit.
Love you.
We are going to introduce our next storytelling pair, our final pair, and then we're going to go into open forum as well, and everyone's mic will be unmuted, and you can share and talk about how this event has resonated with you. I will say before we introduce Shauna and Petros to the floor, please go to our Instagram page. Follow us if you don't already follow us. We the People Stage on Instagram. On our very last post, we shared many of the storytellers' personal graphics on there. Please, on that last post, just tell us how you feel. I can tell, like, sometimes, especially with these digital events, you don't always feel comfortable unmuting your mic, or you might not necessarily have the bandwidth to support that, but you can definitely let us know on Instagram and keep up with everything that we are doing with all of our amazing partners. So please comment, drop a comment, and also follow those wonderful storytellers that we have featured on those personalized graphics. If their Instagram handles on there, you can follow their Instagram pages. If their name's on there, then I encourage you to connect. Maybe it's through LinkedIn. But as you heard from the very top of our program, each of our storytellers has such an amazing and unique story. And our frontline workers to our poets and artists who are visionaries for us, creating a path and a new vision for our new tomorrow, as well as our entrepreneurs and our faith leaders. So again, I just want to thank you all so much for being here and putting your energy in the room. I feel really inspired by this event. So I just really appreciate y'all being here. So without further ado, I want to introduce my dear friends, Petros and Shauna. Petros is also Temple Made, and we met in college. He's an amazing artist. He's building an amazing business. And I know that he has an amazing, both he and Shauna have amazing stories of everyday grit, faith, growth, perseverance. So I'm not going to speak for them. They're amazing individuals. Opening up your microphones. So please just take it away for us.
Ooh, okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Shauna.
Hey.
We're in awe of what we've been a part of and witnessing tonight. Shauna, I believe you wanted to say something, and then I'll jump in.
All right. Yeah, just in light of what's been going on, we're just super humbled right now just to hear all these stories. Like, I was crying when Lindo was, I'm gonna cry right now, telling his story, and Jamina, he had such a radiation of positive energy that was just amazing. So that was just such a gift. I get really nervous public speaking, but just what Jimmy was saying, like, you need to have a voice and you need to put yourself out there. So we're really about the environment. I think right now it's just been a time of reset for everyone. So I think we're all really seeing what matters, just connecting with other people, family, and even valuing just your health. I mean, hearing the frontline workers talk about actually contracting COVID and how scary that must have been, and how they felt guilt because they just wanted to fight for everyone. It's so inspiring, and you just take your health for granted every day. So it's just really refreshing and really brings you back down to earth to remember to stay grateful. So, but we're about helping the planet as well. So, because this is a time of reset, and especially for the environment, I mean, carbon emissions are down to, ultimate low in many, many years. And I think we need to keep that going. So our company is about creating sustainable alternatives to single-use plastics. And that's what we're trying to do. So Petra, go ahead and tell me about your grit. And
So she's the thinker of the group. I'm the talker.
Yeah.
And thank God, because I don't have a brain in me. So thank you for that intro. First, I'm going to say that I definitely feel very small right now. I'm just being honest with y'all. I feel small because what everyone has been speaking about up to this point involves things much bigger than themselves. And my story and what I'm going to just briefly touch on, it's just about me. And I've always wrestled with the fact that I've never really stood for anything, at least not until I met Shauna and she introduced me to what was really going on in the environment. But without further ado, let me give you a little quick snapshot as to how I understand faith and grit. So I'm 35, and I never thought I'd say this, but I am a businessman. I wake up, and Shauna can tell you, it's before coffee, I'm thinking spreadsheets, P&Ls, lean manufacturing. I'm getting excited. I'm talking to her about it. And I'm consumed by just business operations. But this is very recent. For most of my life, I had two big expectations on me that on the other side of the spectrum. My family, my dad is a priest, and my family expected me to become a minister and follow in his footsteps. And then to rebel against that, I became a free spirit painter, artist, living in New York. And for 15 years, I was all in on painting, going to church, rebelling against the church. I went to seminary, I left seminary, I went to art school. And what I realized is in that whole time, I was only thinking about myself. Everything was about me. I didn't care what people thought about my art. I didn't care what people thought about my sermon. And even though I had these larger than life concepts that I was dealing with, I lost all that because I was only focusing on myself and how I felt about paint or a scripture, and that was as far as it went. So I got to a point where financially I was completely failing. Socially, forget it. I was alone. I was living in Boston. I just finished seminary, and it was just going to sleep every night alone. I remember one time my sister called me, and she was having a party for her kids. And I was walking into the house after not talking to anybody probably for a week straight. And I opened the door, and there was just rats eating my food in my apartment. And that was my life. You know, it was just me shut off from everything. And I thought I was doing something romantic because I was dealing with art and scripture and all these noble ideas without connecting to anyone. So the hardest decision for me ever was to move back in with my parents and regroup. I left art, I left the priesthood behind. I said I could always return to that, but I'm just gonna focus, ironically, on me. But rebuilding myself to connect again with people and stop worrying about these big ideas and trying to take what I thought was a good narrative and build it up. And so I did what any disenfranchised artist would do. I decided to start a business and try and make some money. And that was around the time I met Shauna, and she is so committed to the environment. I started to get interested. And together we decided, why don't we try taking my desire to build a business and see if we can do something environmentally friendly. And the craziest thing happened, the craziest thing. The moment I started working with Shauna on our company, I stopped caring what I had to say, and I started listening to what was happening around the world. And the only time my brain got involved was, how can I help manufacture and look at the logistics to build something that's going to help people's lives, that's going to help the environment. And it was Shauna who helped me get out of myself and get involved in an idea that was bigger than me. And so grit is defined as courage and resolve. And I would say that, first of all, you all have a grit that is going to make it's made a lasting impression on us. But for our company, our grit is, we're going to look at every single person and meet them where they are to help make the world and our lives a better place to live sustainably and environmentally. So that's our thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on mute, but thank you for sharing. I have known Petros for a long time. I've known Shauna for a couple of years now. Yeah, because we were living like a block away from each other when I moved back to Philly.
Yeah.
Good times.
But one thing that I've always known about Petros is that he's always been hard on himself. He's always been too hard on himself. And you have never been a person that only thought about yourself. You're an artist, and I think artists have to keep that, as I mentioned before with the metaphor of bandwidth, we have to keep a channel clear enough for the spirit to act through us, to be inspired, to create, and to be a vessel of, sharing our vision with the world. And I think that I know you to be a person who's always had a big vision, and you've always had a desire to create stuff that impacts lots of people. So when you desire to be an artist that had work that was seen by lots of people, it wasn't ever a thing about fame for you. It was, sometimes you get a little pissed off if somebody who you felt was less talented was getting more notoriety. Because
I get so jealous. I get so jealous.
It's okay, but I was really inspired by your pivot into business, because you, as a person who studied marketing, as a marketing professional, to have more of a awareness on some of the strings you sometimes have to pull to get your art in front of a larger audience. I think that business has given you a different appreciation of that vision that you have with the world and for the world. So I see what you and Shauna are building with CZ to be a different incarnation of your artistic vision for the world. You want to build a bigger and better tomorrow that's mindful of future generations. Native Americans were very passionate about thinking on their decisions through the lens of 7 generations in the future. And what your business is building is being mindful of those people who have yet to see the sunlight from the new earth that we're building today. So your passion for the spirit and your commitment to building beautiful things in general, I think has led you down this path, and I think it's on purpose. And both you and Shauna have such a beautiful vision. I really admire it. We had a conversation yesterday, so I just want you to not discount your journey. I want you to really appreciate it. And I appreciate Shauna for bringing out this side of yourself that's all soft and cuddly and gushing. So Petros shared this story last time at Current Brew and Brew, and all the ladies he was talking about Shauna. He was talking about how he met Shauna and how he was a different man before Shauna. And Jimmy was there. I see Jimmy in the background. I see you, Jimmy. Jimmy remembers all the ladies. Well, Jimmy, weren't all the ladies oh, I need me a man I need me a man like that. So don't, I thank you, Shauna, for bringing that out of Petros and, showing us a different side of his black and whiteness,
Trying.
What do you guys feel most inspired by when you're creating, you know? Because you guys are creators.
I mean, this sounds stupid, but I get really, sounds so stupid. I get really emotional when I drive by giant shipping yards. I like seeing those big 40-foot containers because it shows me, number one, this global network that is working so efficiently. If you think about it, you can have something created all the way on the other side of the planet and it'll come on this giant vessel where we have the means to share everything. What I see is that when I look at a shipping yard, I see a platform for sharing. That's what it is. I mean, it's for profit, so that can be worked on, but it's this giant flat, just open space where all these goods come in and out, and it's being shared globally. So and that inspires me because the potential is we have the means now to connect with everybody. Nobody has to have an awful life because we have access now. It's global. We can send containers anywhere. So I know it sounds stupid, but I used to love looking at an empty canvas and then I would attack it with paint. And so these shipping containers are like empty canvases. What are we going to fill it with? Where are we going to send it? They all have that potential. They can all be filled. So that's what inspires me.
Awesome. What about you, Shauna?
Ooh. I'm always, so I do like some photography. I don't post anything, but I'm always just inspired by like just how naturally beautiful things just are in the world. Like just, I don't like anything staged. Like if I photograph anything, it's always just something in its natural state that just happens to be set up a certain way or lit a certain way. Even just trash. I take a lot of pictures of trash. It's kind of weird, but just the juxtaposition of the earth and the trash and the impact is why it's even there in the first place. I don't know. That's it's weird. We're weird. Yeah.
We do have one request. I know we're at the end here. Everyone's probably either a little sauced up or tired, but we put together a survey because we'd really like to learn a little bit about people's experiences with reusable bottles. It's one of our hero products that we're very excited about. And Quentin, can I shamelessly put my survey in the chat here and request? Yeah.
Drop it in the chat.
Nothing in the chat?
No, I said drop it in the chat. Like drop it like it's hot?
Okay. Dropping it like it's a hot one.
So
okay.
This explain a little bit about the survey and what people's contribution to the survey is building.
So I used to live in Philly. I used to live in South Philly, and then I was a makeup artist. I would walk to Ulta and Sephora and Blue Mercury, and I always had a reusable water bottle. And then I moved to Manioc, and I couldn't say I lived in Philly anymore because that doesn't count. Yeah. And I would take the train into the city every day and have my reusable water bottle. So my inspiration for the bottle that we're creating is based off of my needs from living in the city. But I want to see, we want to see what does everyone else need? Is this just me thinking about what I need, or are we all kind of on the same page? So it's totally anonymous, but we would love your feedback just to see if we're kind of all on the same page so we can make the right product for especially people who live in the city.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is instead of trying to push products that are eco-friendly but inconvenient, we model our products to be just as convenient and easy to use as a single-use plastic. And then we work backwards and try to figure out a way how to design a product that is always going to be there when you need it, just like single-use plastic is. So essentially, by doing this survey, you're helping us really polish up the perfect single-use plastic alternative that people would actually want.
Gotcha. So part of what I'm hearing is that by doing the survey, people are helping to build part of the better world that you were just talking about. They're helping to invest in the environment by helping you create and bring to the world your vision, which is to have better, more user-friendly, reusable plastic that will ultimately reduce the amount of recycling or the amount of plastic that ends up in our landfills. Is that fair? Is that accurate?
On the money. You got it.
You're always on the money.
You're so on point always. I love it. You're like,
awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. On a weird note, the light in my room is actually dying. Its battery is dimming. So I know I look very dark I'm dark, period. But I'm very dark on camera right now. So thank you for bearing with me. But I definitely don't like that word weird. I would encourage you to just rethink that. We're artists. And so artists see the world in different ways. If you see beauty and trash on the ground when other people see, a blight, then that's part of your gift that you bring to the world. And I encourage you to just embrace that. And the same thing, Petros, you see stories within those containers, and those containers come from many different places. So I believe that's a metaphor for all of many people who are in little boxes right now on our screens, virtually sharing their stories and sending their stories out into the ether all over. It's creating this opportunity for us that, even though it's sparked by this really difficult time that we're going through with the pandemic and with, everything happening with racism and all of that, it's still giving us an opportunity to connect in new ways, which is something that some of the frontline workers had talked about at the very top of the program. Claire had mentioned that they are creating message boards and new ways of connecting with each other and checking in on one another and making sure that everybody is okay. So I thank you all for joining us here today and checking in on one another, on sharing your stories, on building connection. It's so important now more than ever before, and absolutely echo Jimmy's sentiment that words have the power to make manifest that which was once unmanifested. By sharing our visions with the world, by sharing our dreams with the world, and creating magical manifestations through poetry and opening eyes through spoken word and finding joy in metaphor, supporting our local businesses, and making sure that every Philadelphian counts in the 2020 census. We can support one another, both emotionally, financially, and with our dreams. So on that note, I thank you all so much for joining us on this wonderful journey, virtual event. We are going to open up the lines. Again, I'm gonna, hopefully my buttons kind of.
And as I try to sort of get out of the circle that they've.
So if you're listening to TV, you might want to mute yourself. I don't know whose TV that is, but I definitely just wanted to open the line so that we can.
Somebody watching that situation. So
I don't know what that is, but I found it and I muted them. I know somebody's eating cooked food right now.
I'm really for 1,000, Alex.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm so late.
That's okay. We're glad you're here.
I thought you knew the end, right? I've been telling stories.
Yeah, we stories.
But it's like
happy hour event. But it's actually an event.
Doing this right now. Thank you for sharing it.
Doing some Ida.
Welcome to the party.
I'm doing this phrase.
We are going to, my buttons seem
Over?
now.
No.
We are going to
Mika.
kind of like some feedback from the group
What?
on what your experience has been with us tonight. Anyone feel free to jump in and just start us off.
This was fun, really fun.
Thank you so much, Pedro.
Hey, it was really incredible to see like so many aspects of our city like in a single room, like virtual room together. I don't think I've ever been to an event like that where it's you have the artists over here, you have the health workers over here, you have like the ministers over here, and we're all together. We're all like here, you know, which is really incredible and really beautiful. And it was so awesome to hear everyone's you know, stories and yeah, get like, I don't know, I feel like connected, I feel empowered, I feel excited, I feel enlivened. I mean, I really happy seeing you all and meeting you all, and looking forward to seeing you on the other side of this. Well, and for more of these, you know, happy hours, virtual happy hours as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Marshall. Thanks so much for chiming in. Yeah.
Well, you all made me know right away that I missed a great night. I couldn't get online until now, and here it's almost over, but I get the message that it was a fabulous experience for you all.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we're able to do it again, Carol, and then maybe you can help us by signing for us for that one.
I will not be signing for you. Now, if you want to make it accessible through sign language interpreters, you can have a sign language interpreter on Zoom signing.
Okay.
You can make that happen. But did you have captions tonight? Was it even captioned, or you never got that together?
We never got it together. I tried to alter our settings in Zoom, and I could have sworn it saved, but we've been having some technical difficulties today when we were testing. Thankfully, we did not have very many technical difficulties during the event, but clearly that was one of them. So I do.
Well, that's huge, because that dual access, I mean, ASL interpreters are key for deaf people because ASL is their first language, not English. On the other hand, there are a million deaf and hard of hearing people for whom captions create accessibility, period. So captioning today is the key going forward, because you want to not just comply, you want to celebrate inclusion in a serious way, and that'll make it serious visibly to everything to have those captions going.
Absolutely. That's a really, really strong point. And I'm going to test it again and again. I actually do have a call scheduled for Monday with our account rep on Zoom. So I'll look into that and see, you know, what
Definitely
works in the future.
Like I told Gabby that Zoom, the higher ups, the whole company is boasting about their captioning capabilities, live captioning on Zoom. They're posting it all across the nation now, and it's huge. So it's not like it's no longer like under the radar capability. It's all there. Zoom wants it to happen, so your rep should be able to tie right into their promotion of that.
Yep, you're absolutely right. That's a cool opportunity I didn't even think of. So thank you so much for bringing that to light.
I think we're getting ready to wrap the call, so I'm going to do a shameless plug really quick. The Painted Bright Art Center has a project, Building Bridges, and they are also hosting a Zoom call. So I hope you guys will consider checking that out. Really powerful, and I will share it in the chat in case you are looking to join.
Awesome. Yeah, I think
that's tonight.
Connect.
Yeah, that's happening right now. They just got started not too long ago.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you too, Carol. So glad you could join for a little bit. So, bye-bye. Yeah, we're going to wrap up a little bit early. So thank you all for setting aside time. Please be sure to check out all of the amazing storytellers that shared here tonight, all of the amazing people that came and were part of our community by following, you know, their journey. Of course, those who provided their Instagram handles are on their individual flyers, which can be on Instagram at We the People Stage. You can also find it on your desktop by going to instagram.com/We the People Stage, or going directly to our everyone's individual traffic. So not everyone provided their social media. You can follow up with people through LinkedIn or whatever means they have available, Twitter as well. But you can stay up to date with what's going on with We the People Stage, again, by going to our website, wethepeoplestage.com. It's really, really, really important and critical that we make sure that every Philadelphian is counted in the 2020 in the 2020 census. So please, if you have not already filled out your 2020 census, the paper form that was mailed to your house, then you can go to the link that Stephanie Reed just placed into the chat at 2020census.gov, and you can complete your census right now. There's also a phone number that you can call if you're not an English speaker. Clearly, most people on this call are, but you can call that number and be a reference or be a source of information if you are bilingual and you have people in your network that don't speak English. To Carol's point, we want to be as inclusive as possible, so you can learn about the 2020 census and complete it at 1-844-330-2020 and listen to the instructions for the 2020 census in 12 non-English languages. So I, again, thank you all for joining. Thank you so much to the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing and to the nurses at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you all for joining and sharing your stories and your energy. Pedro, thank you so much for putting your voice in the room. Ava, Gabby, everyone, Petro, Shauna, Stephanie, I'm not gonna get everyone's name, but shout out to our featured storytellers, Jimmy, Shauna, Jamina, Jameer, and Ava. Our frontline workers, Claire-Bennett, Frankie Pinabianco, Jennifer Gill, Marcus Henderson, and of course, Terry Lippman from our Philly Counts working group, as well as Mr. Mike Myers, who spoke from the place of an entrepreneur at Current Brew and Brew, where we have a residency and look forward to going back to when we get through this weird time that we're in. And thank you, shout out to Sean being my neighbor, my next door neighbor who helped us get the word out. Thank you to the mayor's office so much for tweeting about this and letting everyone know. We look forward to the next time. Thank you so much for joining us. I love you guys. Stay connected and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.